Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Ellie and today's video is going to be my top 10 books of 2022. All of the books which are in my top 10 this year have all been books that I've read for the first time this year. The book that's in number 1 is definitely my favourite of the year, and then the others, the more I think about them, the more the order changes, but I'm just going to leave them as they are. So I'm going to go from 10 down to 1. So number 10 is a book that I actually read at the start of this month, and that is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. This was initially a complete cover buy, and then I saw it a lot over TikTok being recommended, so because the cover was so beautiful I wanted to pick this one up myself. This is the story of Evangeline, and it starts with the love of her life is now engaged to her stepsister. So she goes to the Prince of Hearts, Jax, who is one of the Fates, and she makes a deal with him and he agrees to do what she asks as long as she agrees to give him 3 kisses of his choosing and when. I originally thought it meant that it was 3 kisses to him, but it's actually for her to kiss 3 people that he wishes for her to kiss, which I thought was interesting. And then this kind of ended on a cliffhanger, so I've asked for the second book for Christmas, so I'm really hoping that I'm going to get it because I need to see how this story continues. But throughout the story, Evangeline goes on this journey with Jax as she fulfills his side of the deal of the kisses, and he does as he says he's going to do. I can't really say too much without kind of like spoiling things that happen within the book, but I think this is definitely worth the hype. I've read a few books that have been hyped up on TikTok and they fell a little flat for me, but this one definitely lived up to it. Then book number 9, we have The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. This is the story of Zara and Rowan, and this is set around a theme park, and my other main hobby apart from reading is going to theme parks. So when I first heard about this book, I immediately knew it was one that I was gonna like. So Rowan is Zara's boss, and after Rowan's grandfather, I believe it was, passes away, he leaves in the will that each of his 3 grandsons have to complete a task so that they can get their share of the inheritance. So this is the first book in the series. There are 2 more. I haven't yet read the second one, but I feel like if I had, that would probably be in this video too. And then the third book is coming out, I believe, in January. So we've only got a few weeks to wait until that one's out. At first, Rowan and Zara just do not get on, but then they just get to know each other a little better. Rowan has to kind of change his perspective on things and kind of work out what he really wants. This book also has a playlist at the front, and I really love it when books have that. And the title pages also all have like this roller coaster design on them, which I think is really cool. I read this book in 1 sitting back in August, so I think that just says how much I enjoyed this, and the cover's really pretty as well. Book number 8 is again one that has been a very recent read for me, and that is Twisted Love by Huang. This is a brother's best friend romance between Alex and Ava. This is book 1 in the Twisted series. Ava's brother moves away for a while and he asks Alex to keep an eye on his sister Ava just to make sure that she's okay whilst he is away. But as he just kind of keeps popping over and checking in on her, they start to get to know each other a little better. There is a big twist in this towards the end, which I definitely was not expecting, and I can say it did feel a little far-fetched for me, but I enjoyed the characters of Alex and Ava so much that it didn't knock the book off how much I loved it in the end. I really think it was just the characters in this one that made me love this book so much, and then as soon as I read this I went out and bought the rest of the series, so I think that says a lot for how much I enjoyed this one. Book number 7 is one that I don't physically own. I read this on a Kindle Unlimited, and that is The Wrong Heart by Jennifer Hartman. Books don't tend to make me cry, but this one was really emotional. This is the story of Parker and Melody. Melody has recently lost her husband and she goes to this support group which Parker is also part of, and he doesn't really talk to anyone, doesn't really want to be involved, but Melody just tries reaching out to him. Through her repeatedly reaching out and letting him know that she is there for him, he starts to open up to her. There are quite a few triggers in this book, so I would definitely look that up before reading, and the characters kind of have to go through their own process of healing, so it is a really heavy book, so I appreciate this might not be something that everybody wants to read, and it feels weird to say that I really enjoyed a book that had such heavy topics in it. Yeah, I would definitely check the triggers before picking this one up, but this was just a really emotional read and I really did like it. I'm hoping I've got my numbers right, so this should be book number 6, and that was The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. I don't know why I put off reading this for so long, but I eventually picked this up as part of a readathon back in the summer, and I absolutely loved this. So as well as The Wrong Heart, this is one of the only books that almost made me cry. And like I said, that doesn't really tend to happen too much, so I feel like if a book can bring out that emotion in you, then it definitely shows how good it is. Calla lives in Toronto and her dad is ill, so she flies out to Alaska to spend some time with him because they don't really have that much of a relationship, and Alaska is just the complete opposite of what Calla is used to. The first person she really meets in Alaska is Jonah, who is one of the pilots for the company that Calla's dad owns, and he just kind of immediately judges her, and they just get off on the wrong foot to start with because of that. And Calla adjusts to Alaska eventually, and at times she just wants to go back home to Toronto, but then she starts to realise what is really important to her and that she needs to kind of put her father before herself. Throughout that, Jonah kind of sees that and they warm up to each other. This is part of a series as well. I have not read any of the other books in the series, but again, they are on my Christmas list for this year, so we shall see, but I do plan on continuing this series, and I really like the cover of this one as well. Book number 5 is again a recent read. I read this a few days ago and I just devoured it, and that is Last Chance Books by Kelsey Rodkey. Again, this was just a total cover buy, and I really ended up loving this. So this is a young adult romance story of Madeline and Jasper. So they both work for rival bookstores which are across the street from each other. Madeline gets the news that her family's bookstore is going to be closing down because they just don't have the funds to keep going, and Madeline blames the bookshop across the street, which Jasper's family owns, as the reason as to why their business is going down. So she decides to try and sabotage the rival bookshop, and Jasper then retaliates by pranking her back, and that's kind of how the story first builds up. There's just this back and forth between the two trying to come up with ways to try and ruin the other one's business, but then they start to see each other as something more. But Madeline kind of feels like giving in to that is giving in to letting his bookstore win, and the back and forth does go throughout the book even as their sort of friendship develops. I don't know if it would necessarily be a friendship at the start because they don't like each other, but it's not like they're being mean when they're pranking each other. I feel like it was kind of more of a in fun kind of prank, if that makes sense, but they do eventually lead to both wanting something more, and there is sort of a twist towards the end. And yeah, I read this within a day and I absolutely loved it, and I think this is probably my favourite book cover that I found this year as well. It's just gorgeous, and I've not read too many YA books this year, so the fact that I have a YA book within my top 10 is surprising to me. Book number 4, I have Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. This is a mafia romance. Again, I read this as part of a readathon back in the summer, and I read this in a day as well. It just completely stuck with me throughout the year. It's part of a series. Again, I have not read any other books in the series. I think next year I definitely need to get on reading series together instead of just reading lots of different first books and series. This is the story of Callum and Ida. They are part of the rival crime families. This is a marriage of convenience, which is a trope that I don't really tend to enjoy, but I did like it in this sense. And again, there is another Spotify playlist at the front of the book, which I just love. Book number 3, we have Good Girl Complex by Elle Kennedy. I have mentioned this book many times on my channel this year, and at that time I was saying that this is my favourite book of the year, but as you can see, this has been bumped down to number 3. This is the story of Mackenzie and Cooper. Mackenzie is what Cooper would perceive as one of the rich college girls in his small beach town, but Mackenzie isn't like all of those other rich girls, and she kind of wants to stand up on her own 2 feet and prove that she can do what she wants without anyone's help. And then Cooper does end up seeing this in her, and their friendship and then relationship begins to develop. This was another book that I read within a day. I was sat on the beach reading this, which I think just added to the whole vibe of me liking this book. There are 2 books in the series, the second one being Bad Girl Reputation, which I did also read this year, but I still preferred Good Girl Complex. Then my second favourite book of the year, again another recent read, I read this in November, and that is A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime by Monica Murphy. I'd seen a lot of this on YouTube and I love love the cover of this one. This is the story of Ren and Crew. They both attend Lancaster Prep, which is a private school for rich kids that is owned by Crew's family. Ren is the good girl who just tries to get on with everything herself and not get involved with anyone else, just go to school, get her grades and be the good girl that her parents want her to be. Whilst Crew is the typical bad boy, and they get paired up to work for a project together. And at first Ren really doesn't want to work with Crew because she just hates him and doesn't think that he's going to take this project seriously, and she doesn't want that to affect on her grade. And Crew just sees it as his opportunity to have a bit of fun with the good girl. And as they work together, they start to see more sides to the other one. This is quite a thick book, and again, I read this in like 2 days. I absolutely loved this. And this week Monica Murphy actually released a novella in this series, Birthday Kisses. It was only 50 pages long, bookmark's still in here, and I actually read that yesterday. And you get to see Ren and Crew in the future, and I really enjoyed that, just seeing a little bit more to these characters because I really enjoyed them in this book. There are 3 books in the Lancaster Prep series. I believe this is book 2. I have not read 1 or 3. Again, both on my wish list, so I'm definitely gonna try and get around to those in 2023. Although this was the good girl bad guy, I didn't feel that it was too cringy and stereotypical within that, and I liked how Ren opened herself up to Crew as she found more comfortable around him, and I just really love this book. So the number 1 book of the year, I don't know if this is kind of cheating, but my number 1 book is an entire series. Again, if you've been watching my channel throughout the year, you might be able to guess what that is. I'm only going to show you the first book in this series because there are 8 books and I will not be able to hold them all up. My number 1 book of the year or series is the Zodiac Academy series. So this is book 1, The Awakening. I tabbed this, as you can see. I have been buddy reading this entire series with my best friend. Book 8 was released 2 weeks ago and we are about 30% through with that one, but we have completely read books 1 to 7. The series is based around Tori and Darcy Vega, who lived in the mortal world but are brought to a Zodiac Academy where they find out they are fae, and there are a group of 4 guys who are called the Celestial Heirs, who are basically in line to rule the kingdom. But Tori and Darcy find out that they are the long lost princesses. So with them returning to the world of Solaria, they are now battling against the Celestial Heirs to take the crown. And at the start, Tori and Darcy just don't want the crown. They don't want anything to do with it. They just want to kind of keep their heads down, attend Zodiac Academy and let the heirs get on and do what they want. But as the heirs start to push them to their limits, they decide that they want to fight back, and the best way to fight back is to make a stand for their crown. Now, these books, I would say, don't take them too seriously as you go into them. They are described as like an alternative adult Harry Potter, as the students in this are like American college age. I believe the twins are 19 in this and the heirs are 20. And there are things that happen in these books that do make me deeply cringe. But me and my best friend are just so invested in this story, and I do say they do go better as they get on. I've kind of forgotten what happens in the earlier books because these are thick books and a lot happens in them. But if you have been thinking about giving this series a go and don't know whether to, this is my vote for telling you to go ahead and pick up this series. I'm thinking of making an entire video like dedicated to just talking about the entire series once we finish book 8, and I'm going to see if my friend wants to be in that with me, just because we've been reading this whole thing together. And I don't know if that's part of the reason why these are my favourite books of the year, because I have read the entire thing with someone, which just adds to it. We just absolutely love this series. It's emotional, like be ready for that. There's lots of twists and turns. Some of the characters you just immediately hate, some of them you love, some of them you love then decide you hate, then some of them, the ones you hate at the start, you then decide you love them as the story goes on. Like, it's a roller coaster, these books, but they are definitely worth giving a go. So I feel like that was a really quick wrap up of my favourite books of the year, but I feel like I'm on the spot to try and sell these books to you because I enjoyed them so much. But I'm just really happy I found so many new books this year and so many new authors that I definitely changed my reading up this year, and I am going to do a separate video, I don't know when it's going to be up, but of all of my reading stats, because my reading has definitely changed this year compared to how it was in the previous years. So I'm going to look at my stats at the end of the year and see how different they are to last year. And as always, if you have any recommendations, then please leave them in the comments below. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again soon.